Just a brief thought on how you defeat Amalek. Amalek, again, is the vicious nation that attacks Am Yisrael at her flank and strikes at the weak and the vulnerable, and does it because of a principled commitment to eradicating Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, from the face of the earth, because of a fundamental and deep hatred of Hashem's people that really originates at some level from hatred of Hashem. We're supposed to wipe out Amalek according to the Torah, but the Torah understands that there's a temptation not to do that because of the convenience of avoiding the difficult work that involves. So it says, Lo tishkach, don't forget to wipe out Amalek, because it knows that we're going to want to forget. And recently we did try to forget for a while and have borne very bitter consequences as a result of that. But now that we understand what we're dealing with, we should be thinking about what the recipe for success is in the battle against Amalek. And there we can learn elsewhere from the Torah what that looks like, because the Torah, in the early events of the Exodus from Egypt, of Yetziat Mitzrayim, describes a battle with Amalek in the Midbar, in the desert, where Yehoshua bin Nun, the student of Moshe from the tribe of Ephraim, which comes from Joseph, is leading the battle below, while on the hill above, Rosh HaGivah, you have Moshe holding his staff up in the air, and helping him to support his staff are Hur and Aharon. So this is a very rich symbolic structure that tells us a lot about what we need. On the one hand, we need Moshe. We need the Torah. We need to know from HaKadosh Baruch Hu what he wants from us. And we need to be guided by that teaching. And that's what Moshe represents, because, he went up on a hill and brought us the Torah. Not only that, we need Moshe's mateh, his staff, because the staff was the one that turned into a serpent. In other words, it reminds us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Borei Olam. Hashem is the creator of the world. And if he wants a staff to become a serpent, it becomes a serpent, meaning that which we think is totally predictable about the world, in fact, is not. And when things happen that we didn't predict, that's an opportunity for us to find relationship with Hashem if we seek it through the Torah. So part of what we need in order to defeat Amalek is the understanding that what we think is possible and impossible is not actually possible and impossible. And that really only Hashem decides that. And that we can trust in him. That means sometimes to make things that seem impossible happen for us when we merit it, when we're doing the right thing, even though it's difficult. Now we move on to Aharon, right? Aharon is the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So he's standing up on the hill. And what does the high priest do up on a hill? He serves Hashem in Hashem's temple. We're talking now about the Temple Mount in Yerushalayim, about Har HaBayit. And really that's confirmed by the other one, because Hur, who is the other person from the Torah who's holding up the staff, who's not much of a character, but really what we know about him is his ancestry and his offspring. So he's the progenitor of Betzalel. And Betzalel is the craftsman who makes all of the implements of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle that forms the core of the temple. So with Aharon and Hur there, what we really have is the Oved, the servant, and the place where the Avodah is done, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the physical plant of the temple. So we're very much saying the Mikdash as a whole, the temple as a whole, is part of this formula for success. But Hur, interestingly, also represents another thing, because Hur is descended from Kalev, who is one of the spies that goes into the land and says, Alon aleh, we shall go up to the land. And he doesn't care about how scary it is, and we can do it. This is our land. We're going to take it. And he inherits as his Nahala, as his tribal lands, Hebron, where all the patriarchs and matriarchs, except for one, are buried in Marat HaMachpelah, in the cave of the Machpelah. So Hur is descended from Kalev. And not only that, Kalev, we learn in the book of Chronicles in Divrei Yamim, married someone named Ephrat, and that was where Hur came from. But Ephrat, as a name from the Torah, just refers to the location where Rachel is buried. So I said all of the patriarchs and matriarchs plus one, or minus one. So the additional one, Rachel, is buried in Ephrat. So Kalev plus Ephrat makes Hur, which means Hur is about all the patriarchs and matriarchs in all of their places of burial, and more generally about the idea of this is our ancestral land and it belongs to us, and we can go up to it and we can take hold of it. So up on the hill, we have Moshe, which is the Torah. We have the staff, which is that Hashem can make miracles for us. We have Hur, who is both about this is our land and it belongs to us, and this is where all of our ancestors, the Avot and Imahot, the matriarchs and patriarchs, the patriarchs and matriarchs, all lived here and were buried here. And this is, returning to our ancestral heritage. But also, Hur represents the physical plant of the temple. And then you have Aaron over here on the other side, who represents the service that's performed in the temple. So it's temple and land and Torah and Hashem ruling over all because he's the creator of the world and he can make miracles for us. And we need all of that up on the hill for everyone to see, because they need to know, what are we fighting for? What is this about? What's the point? What can we trust in? Why are we doing this? And the answer is, we're doing this because this is our land. And why is it our land? Because Hashem gave it to us so we could serve him in the land according to the Torah, and through all the different mitzvot, and especially the avodah that he gave us that we can do on his holy mountain, Yerushalayim. And all of that together up on the hill is what's necessary for Yehoshua, who's both a student of Moshe and a descendant of Yosef, to win the battle down below against Amalek. And I think it's especially interesting that Yehoshua is the one chosen, because he represents this fusion of Yosef and Moshe, because he's the student of Moshe on the one hand, but he's descended from Yosef on the other. Yosef is the politician, the scientist, the economic genius. He's the guy who fits in Egypt and knows how to get along to become a prince on his own, through his own gumption, so to speak, and run everything through wisdom and cleverness. So you can think of Yosef as being the guy who, like, if you need a fighter jet, he's the one who invented the fighter jet and had enough money to buy it. But on the other hand, you also need the idea that we're following Hashem, and that this isn't just, we can do this with our cleverness, which Yosef is maybe a little bit too much like, because of how well he fits in Egypt. So Yehoshua, on the other hand, is also about the idea of, we're doing this only if Hashem lets us do it, only if Hashem wants us to do it. And that's why, we're in this fight, and that's how we're going to win it. And Yehoshua is the one who actually gets to conquer the land when we first arrive here. And he's also the one who defeats Amalek. So the one with the leadership and wisdom, with the technical prowess on the one hand, and the commitment to Hashem on the other hand, and who ultimately sees his goal as conquering the land for Am Yisrael. He's the one who can defeat Amalek, but he only can do it if we have eyes on the prize, right? If we're thinking about, this is our land, Hashem gave it to us, so that according to his Torah, we can serve him, and that on his mountain, we can bring our sacrifices to him. And B'mihara v'yameinu, we'll be able to do all of that. But having that as the goal, I think, is the knockout formula for the greatest kind of victory that we can hope for in our war with Amalek, that will go midor dor, from generation to generation,